What if the very thing you're ashamed of is exactly what will make you unstoppable? We've been taught that weakness equals failure. That if you break, you lose. That if you feel, you're fragile. But what if that was the lie? The Stoics didn't fear weakness. They welcomed it as the beginning of strength. Have you ever felt exhausted, simply because you had to pretend to be strong? Since we were kids, we've been taught that being weak is something to be ashamed of. That if you break down, if you cry, if you can't carry the weight of the world on your shoulders alone, you've somehow failed. Men are told they can't be afraid. Women are told they can't be soft. And in this world built on expectations, everyone learns to hide their fear. I want you to picture this. A man sitting alone in his car, parked under a flickering light at midnight. The engine's off, the music has stopped. He just had a fight with his wife. His job's on thin ice. His self-worth is hanging by a thread. And yet, when he steps out of that car, he wipes his face, straightens his tie, and walks into the house like nothing's wrong. Because he believes he has to be strong. He believes that to be respected, he can never show weakness. Now imagine a woman. Every day, she carries too much, her kids, her job, her family, the weight of judgment. She can't even remember the last time she cried. Because to her, being strong means never letting anyone see her break. Both of them are living under the same lie. That weakness equals failure. But here's the truth. The Stoics never believed that lie. Seneca once said, "Difficulties strengthen the mind, as labor does the body." What hurts you can also make you stronger. Not by pretending you don't feel, but by having the courage to face what you feel head on. In Stoicism, weakness isn't the end of your story. It's the beginning. Because only when you're brave enough to admit, "I'm scared. I'm hurting. I don't know what to do," that's when you finally start learning how to lead yourself. We live in a world where image matters more than truth. Where people post their wins, but hide their sleepless nights. They show the success, but bury the breakdowns. And because of that, when you feel like you're falling apart, you assume you're the only one failing. But the truth is, we're all weak somewhere. The only difference is how well we hide it. One of the biggest mistakes I see? People trying to act invincible. They confuse emotional control with emotional denial. But that's not what Stoicism teaches. Stoicism doesn't say, "Don't feel." It says, "Feel it, understand it, and choose your response anyway." It doesn't say, "Don't be sad." It asks, "What will you do when sadness comes?" So here's what I want you to try today. The next time you feel weak, emotionally, mentally, or physically, don't rush to bury it. Sit with it. Breathe deep. And ask yourself, what is this moment trying to teach me? You might be surprised. Because sometimes, it's in the emptiest moments that we finally hear the voice that's been buried inside us all along. And that's the first step. Not to fear your weakness, but to transform it into strength. Because if you can accept the weakest parts of yourself, then the world has nothing left it can use to break you. And that is what it truly means to be stoic. There's something most people don't dare to say out loud. That weakness, when seen through the right lens, might actually be the greatest source of human strength. I know. That sounds backwards. We've been conditioned to see strength as something hard, unshakable, something that never cries, never bends, never breaks. But the Stoics, thinkers like Epictetus and Marcus Aurelius, they saw the world through an entirely different lens. Epictetus once said, "It's not things that disturb us, but our judgment of them. It's not the event that destroys you. It's how you interpret it." And that means, weakness only has the power to break you if you believe it should be hidden. But what if you saw it differently? What if you saw it as a signal that it's time to grow? That's when you start going deeper. Because the weakest person isn't the one who cries. It's the one who's afraid to face their own wounds. I remember a real story. A young man named Chris was once interviewed for a documentary on male depression. He grew up in a household where his father told him, "Real men don't cry." And so he lived that way, pushing everything down. Every hurt, every heartbreak, every disappointment. He stayed silent, and pretended to be okay. Until one day, after losing his job and going through a breakup, he sat on the cold floor of his bathroom and felt like he had nothing left. No one left to pretend for. But instead of running again, he did something small. Something he had never dared to do. He picked up the phone, called a friend, and simply said, "I'm not okay." That one sentence opened up an entirely new path. A path of therapy, of journaling, of self-discovery. And years later, Chris wasn't that broken boy pretending to be fine anymore. He became a mentor, helping other young men break free from the toxic silence they were trapped in. You see, real strength isn't the ability to resist your weakness. It's the courage to face it, to own it, and act anyway. But here's where so many people get it wrong. They believe they have to eliminate their weakness before they can truly live. That they have to wait until the fear is gone. Until the sadness disappears. Until the pain is healed. But the truth is, you will never feel completely ready. You don't need to be fully healed to move forward. You just need the courage to walk ahead even while you're still shaking. That's Stoicism. Not suppressing emotions, but learning to move through them without losing your heart in the process. If you want to start making a change today, try this exercise. Next time you feel weak, don't run. Grab a notebook. Write this sentence. "I feel weak because," and let the words pour out. No judgment, no editing, no filter. Just honesty. So you can see yourself clearly. Because once you stare directly at what scares you, it starts to lose its power. And right there, in the same place where you once fell, you'll begin to see the first light of real strength. But how do we train the will and the mind, so that when weakness shows up, we don't drown in it? That's what Stoicism has taught for thousands of years. And in the next part, I'll tell you the story of a man who looked completely defeated. But through Stoicism, he rose again and became a source of inspiration for thousands of others. We'll continue right after this. There are moments in life when you just can't get back up. Not because your body is too tired, but because your spirit gave out long before your legs ever did. I want to tell you a true story about a man named Caleb, a war veteran, a man who once drove armored vehicles through the chaos of the Middle East. He left with patriotism in his heart, and came home carrying wounds no one could see. No one told Caleb that the memories he brought back, the sound of explosions, the death of a brother in arms, the shredded dreams that woke him up in cold sweats, they wouldn't disappear just because he made it back home. He used to be solid. A commander, a rock. But after returning to civilian life, Caleb lost his sense of direction. His first job was a night shift security guard at a parking lot. Not for the paycheck, but to kill the silence. Still, night after night, he'd find himself frozen in place. Hands clenched. Hours passed. And he couldn't remember why. The pattern went on. Insomnia. Emptiness. A slow erosion of self. Until one night, he simply couldn't get up. He sat on the floor of his empty apartment, looked down at his legs, and they felt like they didn't belong to him anymore. That was the first time Caleb thought, maybe I'm broken. But something strange happened the next morning. On the kitchen table, amid the clutter of unpaid bills and unopened mail, was a book someone had gifted him long ago. Meditations, by Marcus Aurelius. He didn't know why, but he opened it at random. The first line he read, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." That sentence cut through the fog like a blade. For the first time in months, Caleb felt like he had something to hold on to. He couldn't erase the past. He couldn't stop the fear from waking him up at 3 a.m. But he could choose how to respond. And that was the beginning. The next day, he bought a notebook and started writing. No deep philosophy. Just raw entries. Moments when he felt out of control. Little by little, he began to notice something. When the panic came, he could breathe. He could wait 90 seconds before reacting. He could write it down, instead of smashing something. 3 years later, Caleb became a mentor at a veteran support center. The same man who once thought he'd never stand again was now standing strong, to help others rise. And you know what's powerful? He never said, "I stopped being weak." Instead, he said, "I've learned to live with it, without letting it lead me." That's Stoicism. Not erasing the pain, but walking through it with courage and tact. Caleb's story isn't a fairy tale. There's no miracle ending. Just a small choice. Repeated. Every single day. And I'm not telling you this to make you admire Caleb. I'm telling you this because you can do the same. You don't have to be a veteran. You don't have to survive war. You just have to be willing to face the war inside yourself. Because weakness doesn't destroy you. Silence about that weakness does. And if you want to learn how to turn every fragile moment into a form of training, then Stoicism offers simple, yet profound tools you can start with today. In the next part, I'll walk you through a few Stoic practices you can use daily to turn pain into discipline and fear into inner peace. No fluff, no theory. Just the first, real, honest steps forward. You don't have to survive a war zone to learn how to be strong. Sometimes, all it takes is looking at your own life. The small collisions, the quiet wounds, the moments where everything feels like it's slipping out of your hands. That is the battlefield you wake up to every single day. And as Caleb's story showed us, change doesn't begin with some grand act of heroism. It begins with a small habit, repeated, until it quietly reshapes the way you see the world. So the question is, how do you start turning weakness into strength, day after day? Stoic philosophy isn't some dry theory you read once and forget. It's a daily practice. And the simpler it is, the more powerful it becomes. You can begin tomorrow morning. The moment you wake up. Don't grab your phone. Don't check the news. Just sit up straight. Take a deep breath. And ask yourself, what can I control today? What might test me, and how do I want to respond? This was Marcus Aurelius' morning ritual. It's called negative visualization. Imagining, in advance, the things that might frustrate you, hurt you, shake you. Will someone insult you today? Maybe. Will traffic be a mess? Probably. Will you feel disappointed, tired, insecure? Almost guaranteed. But the difference is, you're ready. And when it hits, you're no longer a victim. You're the one in command. Like a warrior who isn't surprised when the battle begins. Because he trained for it. In his mind. Every day. Another powerful, yet strangely simple Stoic practice? Voluntary discomfort. It sounds strange. But the Stoics did this for centuries. Seneca once advised, set aside a few days each month, eat little, wear rough clothes, sleep on the floor, and ask yourself, is this what I feared? You don't need to sleep in the street. But you can. Take a cold shower. Turn off your phone for a day. Skip your morning coffee. Run in the rain. Those things won't make you weaker. They remind you that you're stronger than the comforts you've become dependent on. You don't need to feel comfortable to feel safe. In fact, the moment you realize you can handle discomfort, powerlessness, and inconvenience, that's when you become free. And then there's one last practice. Simple, but deeply transformative. Journaling. Not a teenage diary. A conversation with your true self. Just like Marcus Aurelius did. Every evening, write down 3 things. 1. When today did I feel weak? 2. How did I respond, and what could I have done differently? 3. Who do I want to be tomorrow? You're not writing to chase perfection. You're writing to see yourself clearly. Without judgment. And only when you can see the truth, can you begin to change it. You won't see results on day 1. But remember, Marcus Aurelius journaled for 19 years. Not to impress anyone, but to become the kind of man who couldn't be shaken. Not by an empire, not by war, not even by death. Strength doesn't come from muscle or power. It comes from practicing self-mastery. Every day. In the smallest, quietest ways. And if you feel too broken, too tired, too far gone to even begin, remember this. You don't need to be perfect to start. You just need to start. Even if you're not perfect yet. And as the days go by, you'll start to realize the weakness you once felt ashamed of is the exact place where your true strength begins. But what happens when you still feel like you have to fake it? When you keep wearing the mask of, I'm fine, because you're afraid the world won't accept your truth? In the next part, we'll explore the darker side of modern society, where strength becomes a mask, and why the Stoics chose brutal honesty over appearances, even when it came at a cost. There's something even more terrifying than feeling weak. It's having to pretend you're strong every single day, when deep down, you're falling apart. Modern society has turned strength into a mask. We wear it to be accepted, to be admired, to avoid getting hurt. And day by day, we forget what our real face even looks like. I once spoke to a man named David, 40 years old, successful, 2 kids, a beautiful home, a luxury car. From the outside, his life looked perfect. But in a quiet moment, he admitted something that shook me. I'm afraid to go home, because when I'm alone, I don't know who I am if I'm not playing the role of being strong. And he's not alone. How many people are smiling in meetings, while silently feeling empty? How many single mothers seem calm on the outside, but cry themselves to sleep every night? How many young men stay silent because they're afraid of being called weak or not enough? We live in a time where strength is mistaken for emotional suppression. And it's killing us, slowly. But Stoicism never told you to hide the truth. In fact, Stoicism starts with brutal honesty. Honesty so raw, it hurts. Honesty so real, it frees you. Marcus Aurelius didn't journal to show off his victories. He wrote to confront the darkest corners of his own mind. Epictetus once told his students, "You cannot escape yourself. Wherever you go, there you are. You can fool the world. But at night, when it's just you and the silence, you're face to face with the one person you can't run from. Yourself. And if every day feels like a performance, that's not a life. That's a prison wrapped in the costume of success." One of the greatest lies I see in our modern world is the belief that being strong means never needing help. That asking for support is weakness. But do you know who's truly strong? The one who says, "I'm not okay, but I'm learning how to get better." That's real courage. Not the loud, flashy kind you see in movies, but the quiet kind. The kind it takes to remove the mask and live unguarded, even when it hurts. If you're watching this right now, there's a good chance you're wearing a mask too. Maybe you're smiling when you don't want to, nodding when you really want to say no. Maybe you're holding it all together just so you don't fall apart. So let me tell you this. You are not weak because you're tired. You are not wrong because you feel pain. You are human. And that honesty? That's where real strength begins. If you're living in a world that constantly demands you to be strong, let Stoicism remind you. You don't need to pretend. You just need to stay grounded. And that only happens when you live truthfully. Bit by bit, day by day. In the next part, I'll share real-life stories of ordinary people, from Marines to single mothers, who learned how to turn their most fragile moments into the most powerful fuel they've ever known. Not through words, but through quiet, relentless action, and an inner strength that nothing could shake. You can read hundreds of books, listen to thousands of pieces of advice, but sometimes, what changes us most is a real story from an ordinary person. I want to share 3 stories with you. Not of superheroes, but of human beings who once fell apart, but refused to let that fall define the rest of their lives. The first story is about Tommy, a former U.S. Marine. He once believed he was invincible, until he watched his best friend die right in front of him. When he returned to America, the pain followed him like a shadow. He stopped sleeping, stopped talking, stopped feeling. There was a night he stood on a bridge and thought, maybe I should jump. But he didn't. Instead, he picked up the phone and called his ex-wife, the woman he once pushed away because he didn't want her to see him weak. That call didn't heal him, but it opened a door. He started therapy, took up jiu-jitsu, volunteered at a veterans recovery center. 5 years later, Tommy became a fitness coach. And every day, he tells his students, the mind breaks before the body. Train both. He didn't erase the scar. He turned it into strength, and gave it away to serve others. The second story is Angela, a single Latina mother living in Texas. She endured years of emotional abuse from her husband. Every day, she faked stability for her 2 young kids. But every night, she curled up in the bathroom, shaking in silence. One day, her little daughter asked, "Mom, why are you always sad but never say anything?" Angela didn't know how to answer. She just held her daughter and cried. That moment changed everything. She began to write. Not to publish. Just to understand herself. The first pages were soaked in tears. Filled with rage. Fear. Confusion. But the more she wrote, the more she found her own voice again. 3 years later, she published her first book. A raw story about the healing journey of an imperfect woman. That book helped thousands of other women feel less alone. She's not a therapist. She has no fancy degree. But she has the most powerful thing of all. Lived experience, and an honest heart. And finally, the story of Malik. A black boy who grew up in the rough neighborhoods of Chicago. From a young age, Malik learned. Don't cry, don't trust, don't show weakness. But that didn't help him survive. It only made him feel alone. Everything began to shift. When a high school music teacher gave him an old guitar and said, "You don't have to fight everything. Sometimes, you just need to listen." Malik started to play. Then he started to write songs. Music didn't change his past. But it gave him something sacred. A place to be himself. To be vulnerable. To be quiet. To be in pain. At 26, Malik founded a nonprofit that brings music to under-resourced neighborhoods. He helps kids like him turn rage into rhythm. Grief into chords. Silence into sound. He always tells them, pain is fuel. But only if you know how to use it. You see? These people didn't overcome pain by running from it. They didn't deny their weakness. They used it as a launching pad to rise. And if they could do it, through war, through poverty, through loss, then you can begin too. You don't need the perfect answer. You just need an honest intention. Because sometimes, one small step, one phone call, one written sentence, one deep breath, can change the course of your entire life. But you have to choose. Will you keep running from your weakness? Or will you stand still, face it head on, and say, "You don't control me anymore"? In the next part, I want to share with you a spoken monologue. Not advice, but a whisper. Meant for anyone struggling in the dark. A message for the tired hearts. The minds on the edge. And the souls who just need to be reminded. You are not done. There is still hope. This is for you. The one who's tired, but still trying to smile. The one holding it together every day, just to keep from falling apart. The one who feels too broken, too weak, to keep going. I want you to pause. Right now. Take a deep breath. And let me say this, just once, and with everything I've got. You are not broken. You are not less because you're in pain. You are not a failure because you feel lost. You're just human. Exactly as you are. You see, no one teaches us how to fall apart. They teach us how to win, how to be strong, how to keep going. But no one shows us what to do when none of that is enough anymore. You are not wrong for feeling tired. You are not weak for feeling alone. You're simply in a chapter of life that everyone has to walk through eventually. A chapter without background music. Without spotlight. Just silence and broken breaths. But listen to me. Even if you don't believe it yet. This feeling right now, it's not the end. It's a door. A door back to yourself. A door to the truth. That you don't have to be perfect to be loved. That you don't have to be okay to deserve to exist. You just need courage. Courage to pause. Courage to say, I'm not okay, but I'm going to figure it out. Maybe you're crying alone in your car. Maybe you've lost your job, your marriage, your sense of who you are. I get it. But even in the ruins, there is light. Even in the chaos, something new is being built. Even when it feels like you've lost everything, you still have you. And from that place, that raw, real place, you begin again. I won't promise you it'll be easy. I won't promise you'll heal completely. But I can promise you this. If you keep walking, slowly, honestly, you'll never go back to who you were. Because the person who comes out of the dark is not the same as the one who got lost in it. That person has seen themselves shatter and survive. That person is you. So if you feel weak right now, know this. This is not the end. This is the beginning. This feeling, this collapse, this pain, it didn't come to destroy you. It came to refine you. And if you can walk through it, even just one small step at a time, you will become a version of yourself no one, not even you, ever imagined. Unrecognizable. Unbreakable. Unstoppable. Because real strength isn't about never falling. Real strength is lifting your head after you've already hit the ground. You are not alone. You never were. Something strange happens when you stop trying to control the world out there and start aligning the world within you. Suddenly, everything around you softens. Not because life got easier. Not because people became kinder. But because you change. You no longer react in panic. You no longer chase praise or run from criticism. You know when to speak, and when to stay silent. When to step forward, and when to step back. You become a quiet center in the middle of life's chaos. And the most beautiful part is, you no longer need the world to understand you. Because you understand yourself. That's when you realize, stability doesn't come from your surroundings. It comes from you. You can't control the weather, other people, the markets, or the past. But you can control this. Your response. Your thoughts. Your choices. Stoic philosophy never promised eternal happiness. It doesn't sugarcoat pain. It doesn't deny chaos. It simply says, you are enough. You are in control. Act accordingly. And when you begin to act from that solid ground within, the world feels it. People respond differently. Situations begin to shift. Not because they've changed, but because you have. And in the eyes of the Stoic, that's the greatest victory. Not conquering others, but mastering yourself. Because the person who rules their mind is no longer ruled by outcomes. They are not pulled by anger. Not trapped by fear. Not addicted to approval. They live with integrity. Not because someone is watching, but because they no longer live to be watched. They live to become. And you, the one listening to this now, you're standing at that doorway. No one can walk through it for you. But I hope you know, you don't have to walk it alone. You are walking with a philosophy over 2,000 years old, with millions before you. Soldiers, poets, leaders, the lost and the broken, who fell, and then rose again. Quietly, proudly, with a mind no longer held hostage. They didn't need to be understood. They just needed to understand themselves. And when you are steady, the world will adjust. So if you're ready to begin the journey, to become unrecognizable, not because you've changed to please others, but because you've finally come home to yourself, hit subscribe. Because every week, I'll be here to bring you back to what's been within you all along. Inner strength, awareness, and a soul steady enough that nothing can shake it.